Most people think the most dangerous places are maximum security prisons. But some of the most terrifying stories in America happen in county jails, places where you can be locked up for a night and never come out the same. What you're about to hear are confessions inmates didn't dare tell while inside. Stories that surfaced only after bodies were found, lawsuits were filed, and federal investigators stepped in. Behind America's jail walls, there are stories that never appear in booking records or official reports. Stories whispered in holding cells. Stories written later in sworn testimony. Stories told by inmates who survived places like Rikers Island, Cook County Jail, and Los Angeles County Jail. Facilities meant for short stays, but known by many as some of the most dangerous detention centers in the country. Unlike long-term prisons, county jails mix first-time offenders with hardened criminals, gang members with fresh arrests, people awaiting trial housed beside inmates who already know the rules of violence. And in these pressure cooker environments, control often slips away. Former detainees describe nights spent awake, listening for footsteps. They talk about unofficial hierarchies that decide who eats, who sleeps, and who becomes a target. They recall guards who never came when panic buttons were pressed, and housing units where inmates enforce their own brutal rules. These are not rumors. They are documented through federal investigations, civil rights lawsuits, body cam footage, and inmate confessions later used in court. In this documentary, we bring together America's most terrifying jail stories. Not myths, not exaggerations, but verified account from inside. Because some of the most dangerous places aren't where people serve decades. They're where people are sent to wait and are forgotten. Stay with us. If you enjoy real, gripping prison documentaries and true stories, don't forget to like this video, leave a comment, and share it with your friends and family. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss more shocking and exclusive content. The first night is the worst. The moment the steel door slammed shut, Marcus realized jail was nothing like he imagined. It wasn't the movies. It wasn't loud shouting or constant chaos. It was quieter than that, and somehow worse. County jail doesn't welcome you. It swallows you. Marcus had been arrested on a probation violation in Brooklyn and sent to Rikers Island, one of the most documented and most feared jail complexes in America. He wasn't sentenced. He wasn't convicted. Like thousands of others, he was there to wait. And waiting in jail is where the danger begins. The intake process took nearly 12 hours. Fingerprints, mugshots, property bags, cold benches bolted to the floor. Men dozing with their heads against concrete walls, gangster tattoos crawling up their necks and down their arms. Nobody spoke much. You learned fast that talking marked you. When Marcus finally entered the housing unit, the air felt heavy. The smell hit first, sweat, disinfectant, old food. Then the sound, metal clanging, distant shouting, laughter that didn't feel friendly. No officer explained the rules. No orientation. No warning. Inside county jails like Rikers, Cook County, and Los Angeles County Jail, the real rules aren't written anywhere. They're enforced by inmates who've been there longer, who know which guards disappear during night shifts, which cameras don't work, and which bunks are already claimed. Marcus stood frozen with his mattress in his hands. Someone laughed. Another inmate leaned forward, tattoos etched across his face and forearms. Gang markings Marcus recognized instantly. The man didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. You knew, he said. That wasn't a question. In jails across America, former detainees described the first night as a test. Not always a beating. Sometimes it's worse. It's intimidation, isolation, fear. Marcus was told where to sit, not sleep. Sit. He was told not to shower yet, not to eat from the tray when it came. These weren't suggestions. They were survival instructions. In Cook County Jail, federal investigations later confirmed what inmates have been saying for years. Entire housing units controlled by gangs, with officers present but ineffective. In some cases, guards admitted under oath that they avoided certain tiers altogether. Marcus didn't know that yet. He only knew that when lights dimmed, nobody slept. Men stayed awake listening for footsteps. A single pair of shoes approaching your bunk could mean a robbery, a beating, or worse. In jails, violence doesn't always come with shouting. Sometimes it comes quietly, a blanket over your face, hands holding you down, fists moving fast. Marcus kept his eyes open all night. Across the country, former inmates tell the same story with different names. In Los Angeles County Jail, a DOJ investigation found deputies encouraging inmate-on-inmate violence, calling it gladiator-style fights. In Rikers, body cam footage later showed guards watching assaults without intervening. The danger wasn't constant. It was unpredictable. That's what breaks people. By morning, Marcus understood something every detainee learns quickly. County jail is about power, not punishment. Who controls the phone list? Who decides who showers first? Who eats peacefully and who doesn't? And if you don't belong to the right group, or any group, you become currency. One former detainee later testified that he was extorted for commissary every week. Another said he was forced to rent his own bunk. Others described initiation beatings that officers labeled mutual combat to avoid paperwork. Marcus survived his first night without blood. That alone made him lucky. But jail doesn't need to kill you to scar you. Psychologists reviewing jail trauma cases describe symptoms similar to combat stress: hypervigilance, insomnia, paranoia, all from places meant to hold people temporarily. By the end of his first week, Marcus stopped asking how long he'd be there. He already knew the answer didn't matter. Because in America's jails, every day is long enough for something to happen, and many of the most terrifying stories begin exactly this way. The unwritten rules. By the second week, Marcus understood something far more dangerous than violence. Silence. In county jail, silence isn't peace. It's a warning system. When a housing unit goes quiet, it means something is about to happen, or already has. Marcus had learned the surface rules quickly. Don't stare. Don't sit where you're not told. Don't touch the phone unless it's your turn. But beneath those basics was another layer, an unwritten code enforced not by officers, but by inmates with seniority, gang backing, or reputations earned the hard way. Every jail had its version. At Rikers Island, former detainees later testified that entire dorms were divided by invisible borders, racial lines, gang affiliations, street alliances. Crossing one without permission could trigger retaliation. In Cook County Jail, federal monitors documented informal inmate governance, where gangs controlled phones, showers, and even access to medical care. Marcus didn't belong anywhere. That made him vulnerable. On his third day in the unit, an older inmate with a shaved head and heavy gangster tattoos approached him quietly. The man didn't threaten Marcus. He explained the system, calmly, almost politely. Phones cost commissary. Showers cost respect. Protection cost loyalty. Refusal wasn't an option. This wasn't extortion in the loud, dramatic sense people imagine. It was transactional, cold, organized. Inmates who paid stayed invisible. Inmates who didn't became examples. Marcus saw one that afternoon. A younger detainee, barely 20, had tried to use the phone out of turn. Within minutes, 3 men cornered him near the showers. No yelling, no crowd, just fast punches, controlled movements, and a warning delivered afterward. No one pressed the emergency button. Later, Marcus would learn why. Former inmates across multiple jurisdictions describe the same calculation. Pressing the button often makes things worse. Guards might arrive late, or not at all, and when they leave, inmates remember who asked for help. In Los Angeles County Jail, DOJ reports found deputies routinely ignoring inmate distress calls. In some cases, body cam footage showed officers standing outside housing units while assaults continued inside. Marcus noticed that certain guards avoided eye contact. Others stayed behind glass. A few shouted orders they never enforced. Control existed, but only on paper. At night, conversations happened in whispers. Stories passed from bunk to bunk like warnings. Which units were hot? Which guards disappeared during count? Which inmates had green lights, permission to be targeted? Marcus stopped thinking of jail as a place. It was a system. And like any system, it punished those who didn't understand it fast enough. One evening, Marcus was handed a folded note. Inside was a name, not his. A request. He was expected to deliver a message to another housing unit during cleaning detail. He didn't want to, but refusal had consequences. Jails rely on movement, trash runs, food carts, laundry. That's how information travels. That's how conflict spread. Investigative journalists later uncovered how gang leadership operated across units using these exact methods. Marcus delivered the message. Nothing happened immediately. That was worse. The next day, the unit went quiet again. An inmate was found injured in the bathroom, unofficially blamed on a fall. Marcus recognized the name. Nobody spoke about it. The psychological weight began to set in. Sleep came in fragments. His body stayed tense even while sitting still. Psychologists reviewing jail trauma later described this as constant threat monitoring, the brain never shutting off. Short-term detention, long-term damage. Marcus began to understand why some men preferred prison. In prison, sentences were long, but rules were clearer. In jail, everything shifted daily. New arrivals disrupted balance. Released inmates left power vacuums behind. Uncertainty ruled. Inmates who survived longest weren't always the strongest. They were the quietest, the ones who learned when to disappear. Marcus shaved his beard to look older, changed how he walked, lowered his eyes. Survival adaptations developed fast and stayed long after release. Across America, lawsuits filed by former detainees echo these experiences. Not isolated incidents. Patterns. Unwritten rules enforced by violence. Guards overwhelmed or disengaged. Systems that function only after something goes wrong. By the end of his second week, Marcus realized jail wasn't trying to rehabilitate him. It was testing him, and many didn't pass. When control breaks, Marcus noticed a change before anyone said a word. It started with the guards. Count took longer. Shift changes felt rushed. Doors stayed locked longer than usual, then open all at once. In county jails, those small disruptions are dangerous. They mean staffing shortages, internal tension, or something administrators don't want spreading yet. Former detainees across Rikers Island, Cook County Jail, and Los Angeles County Jail describe the same pattern. When the system weakens, inmates feel it immediately, and they move fast to fill the gap. That week, a fight broke out in a nearby unit. It wasn't announced. No alarms. Just rumors carried by cleaning crews and whispered during meal lines. Someone had been stabbed with a sharpened toothbrush. Another inmate was airlifted out. Officers locked down 3 housing units, but not Marcus's. That was the mistake. Without warning, new inmates were transferred into his unit. Strangers dropped into an already unstable hierarchy. Tattoos marked them immediately. Street affiliations clashed. Old beefs resurfaced. Pressure built. Marcus stayed quiet. He'd learned that attention was dangerous. But invisibility didn't guarantee safety, not when others needed someone expendable. On the 4th night, lights dimmed early. Too early. The unit went silent again. Then the sound came, metal striking metal. A scream cut short. Someone banged on a door. Another voice shouted for help. Marcus froze. In Cook County Jail, federal investigators later documented how violent incidents often lasted several minutes before any officer intervened. In Los Angeles, reports showed deputies waiting for backup while assaults continued. This was one of those moments. In Marcus's unit, a fight exploded near the phones. Not a one-on-one, a swarm. Blankets thrown over heads. Hands pulling someone down. The kind of violence designed to confuse witnesses and avoid blame. Marcus watched from his bunk, heart pounding so hard he thought it might give him away. He recognized the victim. It was a young inmate from the showers, the one who used the phone out of turn. This time, nobody stopped it. When guards finally entered, it was with shields and shouting. Inmates scattered instantly. The victim lay curled on the floor, blood pooling beneath his head. Later, the report would say mutual altercation. Marcus knew better. That night, he didn't sleep at all. Violence in jail isn't just physical, it rewires you. Psychologists studying detention trauma describe how witnessing violence triggers the same stress response as experiencing it directly. Your body doesn't care if you were touched. It only knows you were close. Marcus started flinching at every noise. During recreation, he noticed something else. Certain inmates had become untouchable, protected. Rumors said they were feeding information to guards. Others whispered they were connected to deputies themselves. In Los Angeles County Jail, investigations later exposed deputy gangs operating inside facilities, groups with tattoos, symbols, and loyalty systems of their own. Inmates knew which officers favored which groups. Power wasn't just inmate to inmate. It ran through the entire building. One afternoon, Marcus was pulled aside near the phones. "You saw it," a voice said. Not a question. He shook his head. "Good," the man replied. "Keep it that way." Witnesses were liabilities. Days later, Marcus was summoned for an interview. Two officers asked vague questions. Had he noticed anything unusual? Did he know the injured inmate? Marcus answered carefully. He'd already learned the most important rule. Truth doesn't protect you in jail. Silence sometimes does. The injured inmate never returned. Some said he was transferred. Others said he died later in the infirmary. Officially, Marcus never found out. That uncertainty was intentional. Fear spreads faster when outcomes are unclear. By now, Marcus felt himself changing. His emotions dulled. Empathy shrank. Survival took priority over morality. This wasn't who he was outside, but jail doesn't reward who you were. It rewards who you become fast enough. Across the country, former detainees described the same transformation. People enter scared. They leave hardened or broken. And for some, they never leave at all. As the unit stabilized under new, unofficial leadership, Marcus realized something chilling. The violence hadn't been random. It had been corrective, a reminder of the rules. And everyone had received the message. The confessions that exposed everything. The first lawsuit was filed quietly. No press conference. No headlines. Just a civil complaint submitted months after the injured inmate disappeared from Marcus's unit. That's how these stories usually surface. Not through internal reports, but through paperwork. By the time Marcus heard about it, he was already different. Thinner. Quieter. His release date kept shifting, court dates delayed, transport buses overcrowded. Like thousands of others in county jails, he was stuck in procedural limbo. Not guilty, not free, just waiting. Then the investigators arrived. In facilities like Rikers Island, Cook County Jail, and Los Angeles County Jail, federal scrutiny rarely comes quickly. It follows patterns. A death in custody, multiple injuries, video evidence leaked, or a lawsuit that forces records into daylight. This time, it started with sworn statements. Former inmates, some already released, began talking. Not loudly, not publicly, but under oath. They described unchecked gang control, ignored emergency calls, officers who stood back while inmates enforced order. Marcus didn't plan to talk, but silence becomes harder when truth is already moving. One afternoon, he was pulled aside again, this time by people who weren't in uniform. They introduced themselves as investigators. Civilian clothes, calm voices, no threats. They asked about the night of the fight. Marcus hesitated. In jail, cooperation carries consequences, even after release. Former detainees across the country have testified about retaliation, both inside and outside custody. The fear doesn't end at the gate, but the questions were precise. Times, locations, who stood where, how long it took guards to respond. They already knew most of it. That's when Marcus realized something chilling. The system hadn't failed by accident. In Los Angeles County Jail, DOJ investigations later revealed a culture where deputies falsified reports and discouraged inmates from filing complaints. In Rikers, federal monitors documented years of ignored warnings before reforms were forced. What inmates experienced wasn't chaos. It was neglect, institutionalized. Marcus gave a partial statement. Enough to confirm timelines. Enough to corroborate others. He wasn't the only one. Across America, similar confessions emerged after release. Men who said nothing inside suddenly spoke freely once the doors closed behind them. Some recorded interviews anonymously. Others testified in civil court. Many described the same moment, the breaking point when fear stopped working. One former detainee from Cook County testified that he pressed the emergency button repeatedly while another inmate was beaten. No one came. When guards finally entered, they told him to mind his business. Body cam footage later supported his claim. Another from Rikers described guards staging searches after fights, too late to stop anything, but just in time to document compliance. These weren't isolated stories anymore. They were patterns. Marcus learned that the injured inmate from his unit hadn't died immediately. He'd survived long enough to speak to a lawyer. His statement became part of the case, describing the assault, naming the location, identifying failures. That confession changed everything. Internal emails surfaced, staffing rosters, camera blind spots, logs showing delayed response times. What once felt like random terror began to look methodical. But exposure comes at a cost. Inside the jail, word spread fast. Investigators meant scrutiny. Scrutiny meant lockdowns. Lockdowns meant tension. Inmates suspected informants everywhere. Marcus felt the pressure closing in again, the same silence, heavier now. This time, it wasn't about discipline. It was about fear of consequences. In some units, violence spiked. In others, it vanished completely, a warning sign in itself. Administrators issued statements promising reform. Guards attended mandatory trainings. Posters appeared about reporting abuse. But the culture didn't change overnight. Marcus was released 2 months later. Walking out felt unreal. Sunlight too bright. Noise too loud. Freedom too fast. But jail didn't let go. He had trouble sleeping. Flinched in crowds. Avoided eye contact instinctively. These were common symptoms, experts said, documented among former detainees exposed to prolonged threat environments. The confessions continued without him. More lawsuits. More investigations. More footage. And slowly, the walls began to crack. After the walls closed behind you, Marcus stepped into sunlight, but jail didn't leave him behind. The world outside looked too bright, too loud, too fast. He had left steel bars behind, but the shadows of the housing unit followed him. Hypervigilance, fear, and memory flashes of that nightmarish first week lingered like a ghost he couldn't shake. He wasn't alone. Former inmates told similar stories, lasting psychological scars, difficulty reintegrating, nightmares of cell doors slamming, and whispered threats echoing down empty corridors. Psychologists call it post-detention trauma. In county jails, even short-term stays can warp reality. Yet, despite the fear, Marcus's story had weight now. His partial confession, combined with the statements of others, fed into federal investigations, civil rights lawsuits, and internal audits. Policies shifted. Some deputies were disciplined. Cameras were relocated. New inmate oversight programs rolled out. But reform, he quickly learned, was slow and incomplete. Many inmates continued to suffer behind locked doors, invisible to the public eye. Violence, intimidation, and neglect didn't disappear. They moved quietly, like a shadow slipping through narrow halls. The confessions that exposed the worst of Rikers, Cook County, and Los Angeles County jails reminded Marcus, and anyone listening, of a chilling truth. The system often works to hide what happens within its walls, not to prevent it. Even now, federal investigators rely on former detainees, whistleblowers, and lawsuits to uncover what those walls conceal. Marcus realized his own survival wasn't a victory over jail. It was a survival of luck, awareness, and timing. He looked back at the stories he had witnessed, the fights, the fear, the unwritten rules that govern life and death behind steel bars. He knew millions of viewers needed to understand what truly happens inside these jails, the reality so many prefer to ignore. By sharing his experiences, Marcus hoped to protect others, shed light on systemic failures, and warn viewers that danger doesn't only reside in long-term prisons. It could be just a night away in your local county jail. The confessions, the lawsuits, the investigations, they are evidence that silence allows abuse to flourish. And the only way to challenge it is by listening, remembering, and speaking up. For Marcus, the story didn't end at the gate. It continues in courtrooms, policy discussions, and in the whispered confessions of men who survived and men who didn't. And for you, the viewer, The story continues every time you press play, every time you learn the truth behind those walls. Because America's most terrifying jail stories aren't fiction. They are real, they are documented, and they're still happening. If you were shocked by Marcus's story and want to see more real-life account from inside America's most dangerous jails, hit the like button. It helps more people discover these untold stories. Comment below with your thoughts, your questions, or if you've ever witnessed something like this. We read every comment and share the most compelling ones in future videos. Subscribe now and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another deep dive into America's prisons, shocking inmate confessions, and the hidden realities that authorities don't want you to see. Remember, these stories are real, and your awareness matters. Share this video with friends who need to see the truth behind jail walls, because silence allows abuse to continue. Stay tuned, stay alert, and keep watching. The truth isn't just behind bars, it's in every story we tell.